Hi and welcome to my channel, Ghdv-GOD Hates Domestic Violence. I'm talking today about emotional abuse, which sometimes is called psychological abuse, and also I'm talking about verbal abuse. I want to share my personal experience of going through emotional abuse and verbal abuse. I'm going to share with you a glimpse of something that happened to me, so that you can just kind of see, what it's like living with emotional abuse or psychological abuse or verbal abuse. In December 2022, I went to visit my mother, my aunt, and my uncle. They're elderly, the three of them lived together. I hadn't seen them in a number of years because my ex-husband had banned me from seeing them because he said that they were witches and they were spiritually bad for me. And so I couldn't see them, and I couldn't bring my children to see them either. So he didn't want me going there at all, especially without him. So and naturally, before going there in December 2022, I had to ask his permission. Basically, I believed everything my ex-husband said because I looked up to him, thinking that he was a man of God. And but in December 2022, I got suddenly really worried about my uncle, about his whereabouts, because I had spoken to my mother and my aunt a few weeks previously, and they said that they had all been unwell, but I hadn't spoken to my uncle. And I hadn't heard from them again for a few weeks. And I was really concerned about him in particular because I hadn't spoken to him at all for a long, long while. So I told my ex that I had to go and see my uncle. I wanted to make sure that he was okay. And to my surprise, he agreed. My ex agreed that I could go. And not only that I could go, but I could go alone. So I called my cousin and she accompanied me. When we got there, we were not allowed into the house. My auntie we were outside of the door, but my auntie had a massive quarrel with us, and basically she insulted us, and my cousin ended up calling her brother, that is my older cousin, he's a guy, and he came and he picked us up to take us back home. So we spent when he dropped me off at home, he said, he hadn't seen my ex-husband in a number of years. I hadn't really been in touch with my male cousin, so he wanted to say hi to my ex-husband, and I thought that was nice. So my ex-husband came down to the car and we went somewhere. We sat down for a few hours just catching up on old times, and we had just talking and reconnecting really. And I found out that my older male cousin had now become a born-again Christian, so that was really exciting for me. So we started chatting more and more on the phone and catching up. I basically grew up with them, until I was about 10. So he was like a brother to me. And it felt really good. I felt like I had my brother back. So we just started talking together, and especially having been isolated for so long, it just felt nice having another adult to talk to, and my older cousin also enjoyed talking about religion and politics. So, I thought it was okay. And he liked talking about that with my ex-husband as well. A few weeks later, I offered to do a Bible study with my cousin, the male one, with his wife. And so we started doing these Bible studies together, like almost every day. My ex-husband couldn't join in because he couldn't commit to the time on a daily basis. So he began to feel left out. So I suggested that he can have a Bible study with them alone on a Friday. That would just be his time with them, and I would just sort of be in the background looking for scriptures and just sort of be in the background, and they can sort of bring me in if they wanted to. As time went on, whenever I'd be speaking to my cousin, my ex would be saying things like he's not mentally sound, that he was not to be trusted, and that my cousin and his wife were being used by my mother and my aunt to destroy our marriage. Eventually, my ex started saying that I should never take our children to my cousin to see my cousin and his family. He had kids as well. And that each time we were doing the Bible studies with them, he'll make derogatory comments about my cousin and stuff, and say, you know, I wasn't the only one who could do Bible studies with them. And he would just make me so uncomfortable after every interaction with my cousin. So I'll just avoid talking to my cousin as much as I could when my ex was around. In early 2023, I was doing my usual Bible studies with my cousin and his wife. We're discussing how communication was important in a marriage. It was just a part of the scriptures that we were reading. And my ex, who wasn't a part of the Bible study, he just happened to be passing by. He overheard me saying how communication was important in marriage. And he decided to get on the phone and basically ripped me to pieces with his mouth. He took over the phone call and he started calling me a hypocrite and accusing me of not living by what I was preaching. Bear in mind, I was just doing a Bible study, I wasn't preaching. But he decided to tell my cousin and my and his wife, you know, that I had made him miserable for 24 years. And my cousin and his wife, all along, they had the perception that I was happily married to this Christian man. He just ripped me basically to pieces with his mouth. I just sat there quietly, just listening. By the end of the phone call, I felt disgraced, humiliated, completely discredited, belittled, ridiculed, and in complete shock. My ex always prided himself in how he never discussed our family issues with anybody outside of our home. And so that left me in complete shock when he got on the phone with my cousin and his wife and just literally with his word just unleashed on me all sorts of things. As if that wasn't enough, he got off the phone and proceeded to tell me how that a woman like me didn't deserve a man like him. And his words cut through me like a knife. I ended the call with my cousin and his wife at the point of tears. Of course, the Bible study stopped, and I didn't say a word to my ex. I just got on with my day. Later on, he came to me and he said he was sorry that he'd acted that way because he was jealous and insecure because I was spending more time with my cousin than with him. Later on that evening, my cousin came around to try and talk to us because he obviously realized there was tension in the house. I was upset. I was virtually crying on the phone. So he came and he started talking to my ex, and the tone of my ex was basically anger. You know, he was just angry, sort of waving his arms around, you know, just again going on about how I'd made him miserable for 24 years at that time. So my cousin said to him that, look, he should just tone down the way that he speaks and not speak with so much anger in his tone and so much aggression. My ex-husband told my cousin that he's like a light switch. You know, if you switch on a light, it comes on. So if we don't do anything to switch him on, his anger wouldn't be turned on, basically. So nothing was resolved that evening. And my cousin left, and after my cousin left, my ex started going on about how dare my cousin come around and tell him what to do, basically. So we were just back to square one. Nothing was resolved. My ex continued a pattern of intimidation, threatening to ban me from speaking to my cousin, and then switching to trying to convince me on how mentally deficient my cousin was and how he was spiritually bad. And he basically did everything he could to discourage my Bible studies with my cousin. The Friday night Bible studies took place, but they usually ended up with my ex complaining about my attitude and our marriage issues. And this came as a shock because he always discouraged the children and I from sharing our family life with outsiders, and he was telling so-called outsiders about our marriage issues. So in July 2002, we went out of town to my daughter's graduation. We were there for about 2 days. We had no peace. My ex found things to complain about me or about the children. For example, one time the children were in the living room watching television, and then he popped his head round, basically popped his head round to see what they were doing. And he popped his head round to see what they were doing. And then he left the room again. And later on, he got angry with the children, and he said that they should have just realized that he wanted to sit down and clear a space for him. So on the day that we arrived, he wanted to go out to eat. But my daughter, whose graduation it was, she had a sore throat, so she didn't want to do anything, and he got upset about that. On the actual graduation day, my daughter went off to go and take her photographs with her friend. They had to queue for about an hour. So I said to my ex that should we go to the house, and he was upset. And then he turned around and said, do I have an opinion? And I said to him, what do you mean by that she has to go and take her photograph? He got upset. So we went back to the house. He got upset and went off somewhere. The whole 2 days that we were there, it was just fraught with tension, with quarrels. I remember we went into Tesco's to buy something, and I was packing, and he got angry with me about the way I was packing. And in front of other customers, he just started having a go at me, putting me down with his voice raised. And my older daughter, she was just there. She was just so upset with him. She just kind of, not really confronted him, but she just kind of, told him that what he was doing basically wasn't right. And of course he got angry with that. So the whole couple of days that we were there, it was miserable. It was just arguments with him being angry and hostile. Anyway, that was over and done with, and we left and we came back home. A few days after we finished the graduation, that the Friday of that week was our last Bible study with my cousin and his wife. I was in the background as usual. I was cooking. I was making my ex-husband's dinner. So I was going backwards and forwards to the kitchen, and he said that I was being distracted. So I was distracting him, and he got upset about that. And then he started going on and on to my cousin and his wife again, about how I was not submissive. And when I heard that, I just kind of went like this. I shook my head, and he got upset with me. And he started berating me, telling me off, and basically being really hostile and angry. And he ended up, he began to say how unhappy he had been again, raising his voice and really just putting me down, to the point that my cousin and his wife said to him that, look, if he was so unhappy, why don't we just have a period of separation? Obviously he wasn't happy about that. And then he ended the Bible study session ended with him saying that if he was being mean and harsh, is because people got the leaders that they deserved. After the Bible study ended, my cousin called me and said that I should go and apologize to my ex. And I said to him, why? And he said, because my ex said I had been rude, I had a rude attitude. And he said, look, as a Christian, I should just go and apologize. So I agreed. I went to my ex and I said I was sorry for being rude to him. He then turned around and said to me, why am I now coming? Why hadn't I said sorry earlier? And I said I was now saying sorry because I realized I had been rude, and he was upset. And I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. My ex-husband proceeded for the next 4.5 weeks to be hostile and to completely ignore me, to give me the silent treatment, which was his favorite punishment for me. I continue to cook, serve him his dinner on a tray like I always did. I do all the work, my wifely duties, as he liked to call them. And despite any attempts I made to show him affection or to try and converse, he was just cold and hostile. I used to wonder to myself, so how long was this silent treatment going to last for, and what would happen for him to then decide he wanted to start talking to me again? So it went on and on like that for the 4.5 weeks, like I said. About 2 weeks after this so-called silent treatment, my little girl, my last born, she had a bad dream. So I told her and my other the older two children that we should go and speak to my husband about that we can pray together. So when we went downstairs, I was working upstairs, so we went downstairs, and I said to him that, you know, the little girl had a bad dream, that we should pray. And he proceeded to start saying that this is what happens when somebody opens the door for the devil to come in, that people will start having bad dreams. Instead of praying for the child, he went on and on about how we had made him upset during the graduation, and he didn't pray about the dream. He told my little girl to pray. She prayed, and I went off and came back upstairs to continue my work because I was working from home. He then sat down and had a conversation with all three children, and he started going on about how this is the children came to tell me this later, that he was telling them about how he thought having children, having a family of his own will fix him, and how that if I ever went anywhere with my cousin, that the children should never go anywhere with my cousin, and if I ever went anywhere with my cousin, he'll beat me up to protect me. Make that make sense? Anyway, so the children told me this, and a whole lot of other things that obviously he said. About another 2 weeks later, this was into the 4th week of him basically ignoring me with the silent treatment. He started making sort of little comments, like, you know, just random things that he'll be saying every now and then. On one of the days, I took his food to him, and then he held out his arms to me as if to hug me, and I told him no. I said to him, not this time. I said, you have ignored me for 4.5 weeks, and you think it's okay to just open up your arms for a hug? And I said, no. I said, I can't keep doing this, that this is not a healthy relationship. And then I walked away. I was so angry at the injustice of it all that he thought it was okay to just ignore me and be hostile. And then, as he always did, just start conversing with me whenever he wanted to, and nothing will be resolved. He would just brush my feelings aside, and it would just be back to where we started. And when I reacted like this, my ex did what he always does best. He spun the whole thing around and started saying that I was the one who had ignored him for 4.5 weeks. When he said that, my children were around and they overheard what he was saying. They said no, that he was the one who had actually been ignoring me. He wouldn't accept that. He started going on and talking mainly about how I had been ignoring him, and that my cousin was a bad influence on me. And he basically proceeded to do everything possible to stop me from speaking to my cousin. Because of all the tension in the house, my middle daughter, she was 18 at the time, she just could not be left alone in a room with him. She literally followed me everywhere in the house. She wouldn't go to the kitchen by herself to make herself food or anything. She just couldn't be left alone with him. She just felt nervous all the time. Around that time, my children were talking, and apparently my older daughter has said that what the father was doing was emotional abuse. So my middle daughter started looking at what emotional abuse was. She started looking at these national, like, domestic violence websites. I didn't know about what they were doing, what my middle daughter was doing at the time. I didn't know anything about emotional abuse. But when it came out that she had been looking at these websites, I started looking at emotional abuse, what it was, and, you know, why she had been looking at, secretly looking at these domestic abuse websites. And when I read the criteria for emotional abuse, I was shocked. It read like a blueprint of my life, what my life and my relationship had been with my ex-husband for the past 24 years. And I remember going to buy a book. It's I can't actually remember the name of the author, but it's called "Is It Abuse?" And I read that book like in a number of days. I hid it, so he couldn't see it. And I read that book, and I had begun to understand what I had been living for the past 2 decades and more of my life in this relationship. By September 2023, I was in the kitchen. As usual, I was in the kitchen. I was cooking something, making dinner or something, and my ex came to talk to me about how despite everything that's been happening, I should remember that he carries an anointing. And then he also started talking to me about my middle daughter, because something had happened between the two of them. She'd gone angry with him, completely out of character, but that is something I'll discuss in another video about the effect of abuse on children. I tried to explain to him how he should not look at how she had responded in anger toward him, but that he should try to see behind her pain. But he wouldn't accept that. The conversation deteriorated and we started arguing. And again, he started speaking to me about my cousin, and that he said he could ban me from speaking to my cousin. And I said to him, no, you can't. I said to him, you can't ban me from speaking to anyone. I'm an adult. I have my own identity. And then he said was I daring him? So he went to pick up the phone to call my cousin. When he called my cousin was busy, so he couldn't speak to him. And then he went on to say to me, why is it that I don't ask him to pray for Bible studies anymore? And I said to him, I didn't see the point of him praying about our Bible studies with me and my cousin, because I know that he didn't like my cousin or his wife, and I didn't see the point of him praying because I wasn't sure whether those prayers would be going anywhere. At that point, he got angry and he said, you fool, you stupid woman. And then a few other choice words in our dialect, in our language. And then he said, what you want to see, you will see. You will walk naked on the streets. My children were there listening. My middle daughter had covered the ears of her younger sister so that she wouldn't hear what was happening. I didn't say anything. He went on about how he has regrets, and at that time I had finished cooking the dinner, so I went to take his food to him on a plate, on the tray, and he hit the tray and he had this look of disgust on his face. So I left the living room, put the food down, and I went upstairs to go and work. A little while later, he came upstairs and he said the Holy Spirit had told him that he should apologize for calling me stupid and a fool. He said a quick prayer and then he left. Nothing was resolved. So when that happened, I didn't say anything. It was my eyes began to open. I think that was, for me, that's when the scales began to lift off my eyes. I spent the next 4 weeks after what he had said. I spent the next 4 weeks basically coming to terms with the reality of this man that I'd married, who he really was. I just started thinking, I realized that this was the man that saw nothing wrong hurling insults and curses at me, his wife and the mother of his children. This was the man who thought that it was okay to threaten to beat me up. This was the man who said that I was autistic, and he would often say that I had special faraway mind and call me autistic as a way of an insult. Not that I am autistic, but he would think that it was insulting to call me autistic. He'd say I had special faraway mind. He'd sworn at me countless of times, and he'd say that I was acting like a whore because I wanted male validation. He'd say things which were targeted at my insecurities, or say things like, oh, nobody ever wanted you, your ex-partners never came back for you. He would say things which basically ripped out my soul. It felt like my soul was being ripped out of me. He threatened to kill me if I ever left him, or if he ever saw me with another man. He said that I was ignorant. My life was the way it was because I was ignorant. I just started waking up really slowly. This man told my daughter, my little girl, that he'll make me go cuckoo. You don't realize how bad emotional psychological abuse is unless you've actually lived in it. I remember looking at myself one day in the mirror and just feeling like this man has just diminished me. He's reduced me to nothing. And I felt like often when he'll be ripping into me like that, I'll feel like the accuser of the brethren was standing in front of me. I remember telling my cousin one day that I felt so broken. He even changed my name. He gave me, when he first met me, he gave me a completely different name. I had a biblical name. He gave me a traditional name. And I thought that was okay. And I accepted that because for love, you know, you just do that. I didn't realize that he was changing my identity. So many times I just wanted to die. I just wanted to run away from him. But then, you know, I realized that he wouldn't even be bothered. Even if I did die, he would just get on with his life. Even this was even before we separated or anything. He would just get on with his life, and it wouldn't matter to him whatever happened to me. So I started slowly waking up, and I remember one day, he said to me in the bathroom, he said to me, have I lost you? And I looked at him and I said to him that you can't lose what you don't value. And he just smiled. He didn't say anything. You know, he didn't say, what do you mean by I don't value you or anything. He just smiled and I just walked away. Emotional abuse, psychological abuse, and verbal abuse, they're all intertwined and have a very similar impact on a person. It's devaluing, it's demeaning. You are left feeling humiliated and ashamed, despised. The Bible says that we should guard our hearts. Is in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. God says that guard your heart, for out of it are the issues of life. In 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 11, I'm reading from the New Living Translation. It says, I mean that you are not to associate with anyone who claims to be a believer, yet indulges in sexual sin, or is greedy, or worships idols, or is abusive, or is a drunkard, or cheats people. Don't even eat with such people. So guard your heart. You've been listening to God Hates Domestic Violence. Please feel free to share, like, subscribe to my channel, leave comments, and get in touch. My email address, which I'll leave in the description, is ghdv777@gmail.com. Until next time, I hope God will bless you all. And thank you for listening. Bye-bye.